Hey, imagine you wake up in a Viking longship. No walls, no roof, no shelter of any kind. Just water in every direction, as far as you can see, and the very real possibility that everything is trying to kill you. Salt water, wet wool, fish, and 50 men who smell exactly as bad as you do. The good news is, you get to be a Viking. The bad news is, you get to be a Viking. Hey friend, tonight we're going somewhere cold. Very cold. No castles, no monasteries, no muddy market towns. Just water. Grey, flat, endlessly moving water in every direction. And a boat. Not a big boat, about the size of a school bus, with no roof. Before we get into it, go ahead and like the video, hit subscribe if this is the kind of thing you enjoy, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always strange to see who's up at this hour. Now, find a comfortable position, because where you're going tonight, comfortable is not really on offer. Tonight you're a Viking. Not the movie kind, not the helmet with horns kind. Those horns, by the way, were almost entirely invented by a 19th century costume designer. Sorry, the real kind. A Norse seafarer in the late 8th century, on a longship somewhere between Norway and the edge of the known world. On a ship where personal hygiene was, let's say, not the priority. And honestly, you probably wouldn't survive it. Here's what nobody tells you about the Vikings. They weren't always raiding. They weren't always fighting. Most of the time they were just at sea. For weeks. Rowing. Waiting. Watching the horizon. Eating dried fish and doing absolutely nothing dramatic whatsoever. Which makes it perfect for falling asleep to. So settle in. Pull whatever you've got a little closer. We're going to spend the night. We're going to spend the next few hours on the water together. Very, very slowly. Let's begin. Let's start with the ship. Because before we talk about the men who sailed it, before we talk about the sea, the storms, the gods, we need to understand what they were standing on. What was holding them up out there? Because the longship was not just a boat. It was, and I want you to really hear this, one of the most sophisticated pieces of engineering the early medieval world had ever produced. Built by people who had no formal education, no engineering degree, no blueprints, just generations of knowledge passed from father to son, hand to hand, tool to tool, and what they built was extraordinary. The first thing you notice about a longship, if you're standing next to one, is how thin it is. Not thin like fragile, thin like deliberate. The hull was built using a technique called clinker construction, overlapping planks of oak, each one shaved to about an inch thick, riveted together with iron, each plank overlapping the one below it, like scales on a fish. The result was a hull that was flexible, not rigid, flexible, which sounds alarming if you're on it, but was actually the genius of the whole design. In heavy seas, when the waves are coming from every direction, a rigid hull fights the water. It resists, and eventually, the water wins. But a flexible hull moves with it, bends slightly as the wave passes, absorbs it, survives it. The Vikings understood the sea the way you understand something you've lived next to your entire life. Not theoretically, physically, in their hands and their feet and their instincts. And they built a ship that moved the way the sea moved. The keel. This is the backbone of the ship. A single long piece of oak running the entire length of the vessel, from the curved prow at the front to the stern at the back. Finding a piece of oak long enough and strong enough for a keel was itself a significant undertaking. You didn't just go to the forest and pick a tree. You found the right tree, the one with the right grain, the right curve, the right age. Sometimes a shipbuilder would identify a tree and wait. let it grow for another few years, until it was exactly what he needed. Patience measured in years, for a single piece of wood, for a single ship. Now, the size. A typical Viking longship, what historians call a langskip, was somewhere between 60 and 100 feet long, maybe 15 to 20 feet wide at its broadest point, which is not very wide. Picture 30 men on a vessel 15 feet wide. It's barely enough room for two people to pass each other comfortably. There was no below deck, no cabin, no door you could close behind you. Everything happened, eating, sleeping, rowing, arguing, in that same open space, under the sky. In whatever the sky decided to do that day. Rain, wind, sleet, or occasionally, on a rare and beautiful day, actual sunshine, which the crew would have appreciated enormously, and probably complained about not lasting long enough, because some things don't change. The mast. A single mast, stepped meaning set into, a large block of wood called the mast fish, which sat low in the hull, heavy and solid, holding the mast upright against the force of the sail. The sail itself was enormous relative to the ship. Square, made of wool, woven in a diamond pattern that made it stronger than plain weave, often striped, red and white, or red and yellow, the colour visible from miles away, which was the point. You wanted to be seen coming, sometimes because you were trading, sometimes because you weren't. When the wind was good and the sail was up, the longship could move at speeds that genuinely shocked people who encountered it, up to 15 knots in favourable conditions, which doesn't sound impressive until you realise most ships of that era were doing half that. The longship wasn't just fast for its time, it was startlingly, confusingly, terrifyingly fast for the people who watched it arrive. A monastery on the coast of England, a trading port in France, a village on the Irish shore. You saw the sail on the horizon, and before you'd fully processed what you were looking at, it was already much, much closer. But we're not talking about raids tonight. We're talking about the ship itself, and what it felt like to be on one. For days. For weeks. The feel of it underfoot was unlike anything on land. The hull was so shallow, the draft so minimal, that you felt the water very directly. Every wave translated through the wood into your feet, into your legs, into your whole body. A constant, subtle motion, not violent, in calm seas, just a slow, rhythmic rise and fall. Up and down, up and down, the ship breathing with the sea. And after a few days, after your body had adjusted, you stopped noticing it consciously. It became the background of everything, the movement just there, constant, reliable, like breathing. The smell, because every world has a smell, and the longship had a very specific one. Salt, always salt, in the air, on your skin, in your clothes, in your beard. Salt that dried on everything and left a white crust on the dark wood, on the ropes, on the oars. Then pine tar, which was used to waterproof the hull, painted on the outside of the planks, a dark, sharp, resinous smell that never fully left the wood. Then wool, wet wool specifically, because something was always wet on a longship. A sail, a cloak, a sleeping bag made of sheepskin. Wet wool has a smell that is distinctive, warm and animal and slightly overwhelming in an enclosed space. And under all of it, the sea itself, that clean, cold, ancient smell of open water that has no land in it, no smoke, no animals, no people, just water and wind and and distance. The sound. This is the part I want you to really settle into, because the Longship in calm weather had a sound that was almost meditative. The creak of the hull, not a sharp creak, a slow, deep wooden groan as the planks flexed with the movement of the water, over and over. The lap of water against the hull, irregular, never quite the same twice, but always there. The wind in the rigging, a low hum when it was gentle, a higher note when it picked up. And the oars. When they were rowing, the oars in the water had a sound of their own. The dip, the pull, the lift. 15 oars on each side moving together. The rhythm of it like a slow, breathing machine. Dip, pull, lift. Dip, pull, lift. Over and over. Out on the open water. The prow. We should talk about the prow, because the prow of a longship is what most people picture when they picture a Viking ship. That high, curved bow, rising dramatically from the waterline, sometimes carved, sometimes decorated, sometimes, famously, fitted with a carved dragon head, which is where the term drakkar comes from. Dragon ship. The dragon head was not just decoration. It was a statement, a warning, a spiritual object. Norse law actually specified, and this is real, that the dragon head had to be removed when approaching a friendly shore, so as not to frighten the land spirits, who were real, who were present, who noticed things. The Vikings were not a people who assumed the world was indifferent to them. They assumed it was watching, paying attention, always paying attention. So, here you are, standing on the deck of a longship, somewhere in the North Sea. The year is somewhere around 800 AD. The wood is cold under your feet, the hull moving slowly beneath you. That constant, gentle rise and fall. Salt on your lips, wind at your back, the smell of pine tar and wet wool around you, and in every direction, water. Just water. Grey and vast and completely indifferent to how small this ship is, how small you are, how far from home. And yet, the ship holds. The keel is true. The planks are sound. Someone built this thing well. Someone spent months on this. Someone chose the right tree, waited for the right wood, shaped it by hand, riveted it together plank by plank, and trusted it to the sea. And the sea accepted it. The ship holds. It always held. Let that motion find you, that slow rise and fall, up and down, up and down. Chapter 2 is there when you need it. The crew, 30 men on a ship this size. Who they were, what they carried with them, what they left behind. But only when you're ready. The water isn't going anywhere. Let's talk about the men, because the ship was nothing without them. A beautiful, perfectly built piece of oak and iron, sitting completely useless in a fjord, without the 30 or so men who knew what to do with it. 30 men, give or take. Depending on the ship, depending on the voyage. 30 men in a space, as we established last chapter, about the size of a school bus, with no walls between them, no private space, no door to close. For weeks, you got to know each other very well, whether you wanted to or not. Now, who were these men exactly? This is where the popular image gets it wrong again, because when most people picture a Viking crew, they picture warriors, hard men, scarred, dangerous, living only for battle and glory and the approval of Odin. And some of them were that. Some of them. But most of the men on most longships, were farmers, men who had fields at home, families at home, animals that needed feeding at home, who went to sea in the summer when the farming work allowed it, and came back in the autumn, before the harvest needed bringing in. The Viking Age was not a culture of professional warriors, it was a culture of farmers, who were also sailors, who were also, when the occasion called for it, fighters. The same man, all three things, depending on the season. The crew had a structure, a hierarchy. At the top, the captain, called the herseer in some contexts, or simply the man who owned the ship, because usually the captain and the owner were the same person. The ship was his, the voyage was his, the decisions were his, and the crew followed him, not because they had to necessarily, but because they had chosen to. This is an important distinction. Norse society was not a strict top-down hierarchy the way medieval feudal society was. A Viking crew was more like a voluntary agreement. You signed on because you trusted the captain, because you believed the voyage would be worth it, because the reputation of this particular man, this particular ship, was good enough that you were willing to put your life in his hands. For weeks, on the open sea. That kind of trust is not given lightly, and a captain who lost it found himself alone very quickly. The steering oar. This is worth a moment, because the Longship didn't have a rudder the way modern ships do. It had a steering oar, a large oar mounted on the right side of the ship, at the stern, which is why the right side of a ship is still called the starboard side, from the Old Norse stjornborði, steering side, another word that survived, long after the ships that made it. The man on the steering oar, usually the captain himself on a smaller vessel, stood at the stern and controlled the direction of the ship through muscle and instinct and feel. Not instruments, not charts. Feel. The way the ship responded to the water, the way the wind pushed against the sail, the angle of the waves against the hull. Hours at that oar, days at that oar, reading the sea the way you read a face, looking for what it was about to do. Below the captain, the experienced men, the ones who had sailed before, who knew the ropes, literally. Which rope controlled which part of the sail, how to read the wind, how to manage the oars in heavy weather, when to push and when to rest. These men were valuable, irreplaceable really. Their knowledge lived in their bodies, not in any book, not written down anywhere, just in the way their hands moved, the way they tilted their head to read the wind, the way they watched the water without appearing to watch anything at all. And then, the younger men, first voyagers, boys sometimes, 15, 16, old enough to pull an oar, old enough to be useful. This was how it worked. You learned by going. There was no Viking sailing school, no classroom, no theoretical training. You got on the ship, you watched, you did what you were told, you made mistakes, and hopefully the mistakes weren't fatal, and slowly, over voyages, over years, you became someone who knew. The first voyage was always the hardest. The seasickness, the exhaustion, the cold that never really left, the homesickness that arrived around day 3 and didn't leave until you were back in sight of land. Sometimes not even then. Let's talk about what these men brought with them, because packing for a Viking voyage was a very specific science. Space was extremely limited. Every item had to earn its place. Each man had a sea chest, a wooden box, roughly the size of a large trunk, which served two purposes: storage, obviously, and seat. The sea chests were arranged along the sides of the ship. Each man sat on his own chest to row, his oar going out through a hole in the hull beside him. So the chest wasn't just your belongings, it was your workstation, your seat, your bed, your piece of the ship, the one small space that was yours. Inside the chest, what did he carry? Wool clothing, several layers of it, a tunic, trousers, a heavy cloak. Wool was the miracle fabric of the Viking world. It insulated when wet, it dried relatively quickly. It was warm even when the wind was cutting straight through everything else. A good wool cloak on a Viking longship was worth almost as much as the weapons. Then, food, dried and preserved. Stockfish, dried cod, hard as wood until you soaked it. Hard bread that lasted weeks. Dried meat. maybe some dried fruit if he was organised, a water skin, maybe a small ale skin. Then, tools, a knife, always a knife, for eating, for rope work, for wood carving on the long, quiet days, for whatever else needed doing, and weapons, a sword if he owned one, an axe more likely, a spear, a round wooden shield lashed to the side of the ship, not because a fight was necessarily coming, but because on the open sea, you didn't assume. Now, the social world of the ship, because 30 men in a small space for weeks develop a social world, whether they intend to or not. Bonds form, hierarchies settle, friendships deepen in the particular way they do when you're cold and tired and far from home together. There were the men who were always cheerful, who made jokes when the weather was bad, who kept the mood from collapsing into grey silence. These men were valuable beyond their rowing ability. There were the quiet ones, who said almost nothing for days, but who were always exactly where they needed to be, whose silence was reliable, whose steadiness was its own kind of comfort. There were the ones who complained. Every crew had them, who voiced what everyone was thinking and somehow made it easier to bear. Too cold, too wet, too far from home. Yes, we know. We're all here. The Norse had a concept, félag, a fellowship, a shared enterprise. Men who went into something together and shared what came out of it. The profits of a trading voyage divided equally, the spoils of a raid shared according to agreed terms, the losses borne together. This was not just a practical arrangement, it was a bond, a moral commitment. You were responsible for these men, and they were responsible for you. On a longship in the middle of the North Sea, that responsibility was not abstract. If the man next to you collapsed at the oar, you rowed harder. If the man on the steering oar was exhausted, you took over. If someone fell overboard, you did everything you could. The sea didn't care about any of you individually, but the crew cared. The crew was the only thing standing between each man and the indifference of the water. By evening, the first day's rowing is done. The sail is up. The wind is doing the work now, and the crew is settling. Men pulling food from their chests, tearing pieces of hard bread, passing a water skin, eating in that quiet way you eat when you're tired and hungry, and food is simple, and nothing about the meal requires comment. The conversation is low, small things, the wind direction, how far they've come, how far still to go. Someone mentions his farm, something he should have fixed before he left. Someone else laughs quietly. We all left something unfinished. We always do. And then, slowly, one by one, they prepare for sleep, which we'll come back to in Chapter 6, because sleeping on a longship deserves its own chapter entirely. For now, just know that the preparation was simple. A sleeping skin pulled from the chest, sheepskin usually, or a heavy woolen blanket, pulled over the shoulders, the chest as a pillow or a windbreak, the deck as a bed, and the ship still moving beneath them, that constant, patient, rhythmic rise and fall. Up and down, up and down. 30 men, on a ship in the dark, going somewhere, together. 30 men, going somewhere together. Let that motion find you again, that slow rise and fall, the creak of the wood, the water against the hull. Chapter 3 is waiting, leaving shore, the fjord disappearing behind you, the coast getting smaller, the open sea beginning. But there's no rush. The sea goes on for a long time. It's before dawn. The fjord is completely still, the water like dark glass, reflecting the last of the night sky. And on the shore, quiet movement. Men carrying things to the ship, loading the last of the provisions, checking the ropes, running hands along the hull one final time. The way you check something when you know you won't see it for a long time, when you want to make sure you've memorized it. Because departure days have a particular feeling. They always have. That specific mixture of readiness and reluctance, and something that isn't quite fear but lives in the same neighbourhood. Let's talk about where we're leaving from. A Norse settlement, somewhere along the western coast of Norway. The landscape here is extraordinary. Fjords cutting deep into the land, mountains rising straight from the water, steep and dark and permanent. The kind of landscape that makes you feel small in a way that isn't unpleasant, just accurate. You are small. The mountains have been here longer than anyone can remember. The village itself is modest. A cluster of longhouses along the shore, timber and turf, low roofs, smoke beginning to rise from one of them, someone already up, already tending the fire, the smell of wood smoke drifting across the still water, mixing with the cold, salt air. The smell of home. On the last morning you'll smell it for a long time. The families are there. This is the part nobody talks about much. The people who weren't getting on the ship. The wives, the children, the elderly parents, standing on the shore, watching the preparations, saying the things you say when you don't know when you'll see someone again. Norse women were not passive figures. While the men were at sea, sometimes for months, the women ran everything. The farm, the household, the animals, the finances, the children, the decisions, all of it. Norse law gave women significant rights compared to most of the medieval world. They could own property, initiate divorce, manage estates independently, which was necessary, because the men kept leaving, and someone had to keep everything together while they did. There are Norse poems about this moment. Departure, the shore getting smaller, the faces of the people left behind becoming harder to read. There is a type of Old Norse poetry called skaldic verse, composed by poets who travelled with Viking crews, who recorded what they saw and felt. And some of what they recorded was this: the leaving, the particular grief of a voluntary departure. You chose to go. Nobody made you. And yet, standing at the stern watching the shore disappear, choice doesn't make it easier. It never makes it easier. Now, the practical business of getting underway, because a longship departure was not a simple thing. It required coordination, timing, attention to things that couldn't be rushed. The tide first. You didn't leave against the tide if you could help it. You waited for it. The tide and the wind together, ideally both moving in the right direction, could carry you out of the fjord with minimal effort from the crew. Which mattered, because there were weeks of effort ahead. You didn't waste energy at the start. The captain knew the tides, had known them since childhood. This fjord, this particular water, the way it moved in different seasons, different weathers. The sea was not a mystery to him. It was a language he had been speaking his entire life. The ritual before departure. Because there was always a ritual. The Norse did not leave for sea without acknowledging what they were about to enter. An offering, sometimes to Odin, the All-Father, god of wisdom and war and the unpredictable. Sometimes to Njord, the god of the sea and seafaring and favourable winds, the one you wanted on your side when the weather turned. The offering was simple usually. Food cast into the water, a few words spoken quietly, an acknowledgement. We are going out there. We know what out there is. We are asking for your attention, your favour if you're willing, and your mercy if things go wrong. There was nothing casual about a Viking relationship with the sea. It was not background. It was not scenery. It was a living thing, a force with moods and preferences and the absolute power to end everything without warning. You respected it. You honoured it. And you hoped, sincerely hoped, that it would let you come home. And then, the moment. The captain gives the word. Not loudly, just the word. And the crew moves. The ship is pushed from the shore, men wading into the shallows to push it clear. The cold water around their legs, knees, thighs. Cold. Always cold. Then they climb aboard, dripping, taking their places at the oars. the oars going out through the holes in the hull, the familiar weight of them in their hands. The captain at the stern, hand on the steering oar, looking ahead, not back. The oars find their rhythm quickly. These men have done this before, most of them. The muscle memory is there, the body knowing what to do before the mind has fully caught up with the morning. Dip, pull, lift. Dip, pull, lift. The ship moving through the still water of the fjord, almost silently, just the oars and the water and the creak of the hull, and behind them, the shore getting smaller. Someone looks back, just once, the village still visible, the figures on the shore, still there, still watching. He turns back to his oar. There's nothing to do with that feeling except carry it. The fjord is long. They row for an hour before the open sea appears, the mountains on either side gradually widening, the water changing, from the dark, still glass of the sheltered fjord to something else, something that moves differently. The first long swell of open water, gentle now, just a suggestion. The ship rising slightly, falling slightly. The younger men feel it in their stomachs, that first hello from the open sea. The older ones just row. They know this feeling. They know what comes after it. You get used to it. Eventually. The sail goes up. When the wind is right, and this morning it is, the sail goes up and the oars come in. The relief of that. Arms that have been pulling for an hour, suddenly, nothing. The oars laid along the sides of the ship. The sail catching the wind, filling slowly, and then fully. That deep sound of heavy wool under tension, and the ship accelerating. Not dramatically, just finding its speed. The speed it was built for. The crew feels it through the deck. That particular sensation of a ship running well. Wind and water and wood all working together. The way it's supposed to feel. And now, the coast. For the first hour of open water, the Norwegian coast is still visible. Dark mountains against the sky. The familiar shapes of home. The captain knows every peak, every headland, every distinctive rock formation along this stretch of shore. They are his landmarks, his navigation. As long as the coast is visible, he knows exactly where he is. But the coast is getting lower now, the mountains shrinking, the details disappearing. First the individual trees, then the smaller peaks, then just the broad outline, dark against pale sky, getting lower and lower and lower, until it's gone. This moment, when the last of the land disappears, is not a small thing, even for men who have done this before, even for the captain, even for the most experienced sailor on the ship. There is something that happens in the body when there is no land in any direction, a particular kind of awareness, a heightening. The horizon becomes everything, because there's nothing else. Just that thin line where the sea meets the sky, going all the way around you, 360 degrees. Water in every direction, as far as you can see, and further. The ship very small now. In a way it wasn't in the fjord. The mountains made it look almost large. The open sea makes it look like what it is, a piece of wood on an ocean. But here is what the Vikings knew, what they had always known, what the mountains and the fjords and the long winters had taught them before they ever set foot on a ship. Smallness is not the same as weakness. The ship is small, the sea is enormous, and the ship moves through it anyway, not fighting it, moving with it, reading it, using it. The way the hull flexes with the wave, the way the sail adjusts to the wind, the way the captain reads the water and makes the tiny, constant corrections that keep them on course. not overpowering the sea, working with it, patiently, persistently, mile by mile. The day opens up around them, grey at first, then, briefly, a break in the clouds, actual sunlight on the water, the sea going from grey to silver to something almost blue. The crew notices. Someone says something. Someone else laughs. A brief lightness. The sun doing what it always does when it appears after grey, reminding you that the world is larger and warmer and more beautiful than the weather sometimes suggests. Even out here. Especially out here. The sail full, the oars at rest, the ship moving steadily west, or south, or wherever this particular voyage is going. The coast of Norway, long gone. The destination, not yet visible. Just this, the in-between, the open water, the long, uninterrupted middle of the voyage, which is most of it, which is almost all of it. The shore is gone. There is only the sea now. Let the motion find you. That slow rise and fall. The sail full above you. The wind doing the work. Your arms at rest. Chapter 4 is waiting. The rowing. The hours and hours of it. The rhythm that gets inside you and stays there. But not yet. Rest while the wind holds. The wind died sometime in the night. No drama, no storm, just the sail going slack. The ship slowing. The captain feeling it through the steering oar before anyone else noticed. He said one word, and the crew knew. Oars out. This is the part of Viking seafaring that doesn't make it into the stories. The sagas talk about storms, battles, landfalls, heroic moments. They don't talk about this. Hours of rowing, in no wind, on a flat grey sea, going nowhere particularly fast. Just forward. Always forward. Because this was the reality. Wind was a gift, a favourable wind. The right direction, the right strength, was something you were grateful for, something you made offerings for, something you noticed and appreciated with the intensity of people whose lives depended on it. But you couldn't count on it, and when it failed, you rowed. Let's talk about what rowing actually felt like, because it's easy to say the word, rowing, and not really feel what it meant. Each man sat on his sea chest, the oar going out through the oar hole, a small circular opening in the hull beside him, about 4 inches across, fitted with a wooden plug when the oar wasn't in use. The oar itself was long, 17 to 19 feet, made of pine usually, light enough to handle, heavy enough to feel in your hands after an hour. The grip was simple, both hands around the shaft. The movement, reach forward, dip the blade into the water, pull, lift, reach forward again. Simple. Endlessly simple. The first 30 minutes, not so bad. The body is fresh, the muscles warm, the rhythm comes quickly. There's almost something satisfying about it. The synchronization of 30 men moving together. The sound of it. The feel of the ship responding. After an hour, the shoulders begin to talk. Not painfully yet, just present, making themselves known. After 2 hours, the lower back, the particular ache of a repeated motion in a bent position, the body saying, "This is a lot." After 3 hours, everything. Everything talking at once. But you row, because everyone else is rowing, because the man next to you hasn't stopped, because the captain is watching, because the ship only moves if everyone moves it. The rhythm. This is the thing about long-distance rowing that changes everything. You don't think about each stroke. You can't. If you think about each stroke, if you count them, if you make each one a conscious decision, you'll stop within the hour. Instead, you find the rhythm, and you let the rhythm carry you. The body taking over, the mind stepping back, settling into something quieter. Not sleep, not exactly, but something in that direction. A moving meditation. The body doing its work while the mind goes somewhere else entirely. Somewhere warmer. Somewhere still. Some crews sang a rowing song, not for entertainment, for synchronization. A simple melody, a repeated phrase, something with a beat that matched the stroke. Because when 30 men row in perfect unison, the efficiency is remarkable. The ship moves measurably faster than when the timing is loose. The song kept the timing, and the song did something else too, something harder to measure. It kept the men together, not just physically, together in the way a shared sound makes people together. 30 voices and 30 oars moving as one thing, one organism, on a grey sea, going somewhere. The watch system, because nobody rowed for 12 hours straight. Even Vikings had limits. The crew was divided into shifts, half rowing, half resting, rotating at regular intervals. The resting men, sleeping if they could, eating, sitting quietly, watching the water, thinking about whatever men think about when they have nothing to do except exist on a ship in the middle of the sea. Home, mostly. Always home. The shift change was simple. The resting man tapped the rowing man on the shoulder. They switched places, without breaking the rhythm if possible. The oar passing from tired hands to rested ones. The stroke continuing. The ship not noticing. This is the elegance of a well-run crew. Everything happening without drama, without interruption. The machine of the ship running on human effort so smoothly, it almost looks effortless. It is not effortless. Let's talk about the sound again, because I want you to really be here for a moment. On this ship, on this water, in this grey middle of nowhere. The oars. That specific sound of an oar blade entering water. Not a splash, a dip. Clean and quiet. Then the pull, the water resisting and then giving, a low churning alongside the hull. Then the lift, water dripping from the blade, each drop catching the light briefly, before the oar swings forward again. 15 oars on each side, 30 of these sounds, overlapping, almost synchronized, almost one sound. Almost. And under it, the hull, moving through the water, that low, continuous sound of water parting around the bow and closing again behind the stern. The ship breathing, the sea breathing with it. By midday, the wind returns, a whisper at first, the captain's hand on the steering oar feeling it before the crew does, the surface of the water changing slightly, small ripples where there were none. Then, a definite breath, from the right direction. The captain says the word, sail up, and the relief of it moves through the crew like something physical. Oars in, arms resting, hands opening from their grip, fingers straightening slowly. The particular relief of stopping. That only exists because you were going. The hands. Let's talk about the hands. Because a Viking rower's hands told the whole story. Calluses on the palms, built up over years of this. So thick they barely felt the oar shaft anymore. Blisters on a first voyage. always blisters on a first voyage. The soft skin of a farmer meeting the wood for the first time. The wood winning. By the second voyage, the calluses had started. By the third, the hands were changing. Harder, broader, shaped by the oar. The way the body is always shaped by what it does repeatedly. What we do leaves marks on us. Always. The afternoon passes slowly, the wind holding, the sail full, the oars at rest. The crew in that particular state of not quite awake, not quite asleep. The body tired enough to want sleep. The motion of the ship doing nothing to discourage it. Some men sleep sitting up, head dropping forward, jerking awake, dropping again. The battle with sleep that the body always wins eventually. Others watch the water, hypnotized by it, the way it moves, the patterns in it. Always different, always the same. The sea never runs out of variations on itself. One man is carving. This is what you did with the empty hours. A piece of wood from his chest. His knife moving slowly. Something taking shape. Hard to say what yet. Maybe a figure, a face, an animal. Something to bring home. Something to show for the hours. The Norse were extraordinary carvers. Wood, bone, antler. The craft passed down through families. The eye trained from childhood to see the shape inside the material. And the long, empty hours of a sea voyage were when that craft found its time. The hands finding something to do, when everything else was waiting. The light is changing now. The afternoon going toward evening. The sky in the west, where the sun is setting, going from pale grey to something warmer. A thin line of orange at the horizon, gone in minutes, but there. The crew watches it, without talking, a shared moment. The sun going down on the open ocean is a specific and unrepeatable thing. No land to interrupt it, no buildings, no trees. Just the full arc of the sky doing what it does when nothing gets in the way. Something worth seeing, even on a hard day. Especially on a hard day. And as the light fades, the wind softens again. Not dying, just quieter. The sail still working, but gently now. The ship slowing slightly, moving through the darkening water with less urgency. As if the sea, like everything else, is settling in for the night, letting the day go, becoming quieter, darker, slower. The stars beginning to appear. 1, then 3, then too many to count. Out here, with no fires and no torches and nothing competing, the stars are extraordinary. The crew settles. Food distributed, eaten quietly. The days rowing in their bodies, heavy and warm now. The particular tiredness that comes from honest physical work. The kind that doesn't ask permission. The kind that simply arrives and takes you with it. The oars are at rest. The wind is doing the work now, and the stars are out. Let your arms rest. Let the rhythm go. The dip and the pull and the lift. You can put that down now. Chapter 5 is waiting. What they ate. The food that kept 30 men alive on an ocean crossing. Simple things. Hard things. Things that tasted extraordinary when you were hungry enough, but only when you're ready. The ship is moving. You don't have to do anything at all. Let's talk about food, because everybody ate, even Vikings, even on a longship, even in the middle of the North Sea with no land in sight and nothing on the menu except whatever fit in a wooden chest. You still had to eat. The body insisted. Rowing insisted. You cannot pull an oar for 6 hours a day on nothing. The mathematics of physical labour are very straightforward. Energy in, energy out. And on a Viking longship, energy out was considerable. Now, before we get into the specifics, I want to address the obvious problem. There was no kitchen on a longship, no fire, no cooking, not at sea. A fire on a wooden ship, on a ship made entirely of wood, was not something you attempted. Not unless you wanted to solve the problem of the voyage by ending it very quickly. So everything eaten at sea was cold. Everything was preserved. Everything was prepared on land before departure and eaten as it was. No warming it up, no improving it, no pretending it was something it wasn't. You ate what you had. Cold. In the wind. The stockfish. This was the foundation of the Viking sea diet, and it deserves a proper introduction. Stockfish was cod, or sometimes other white fish, caught in enormous quantities off the Norwegian coast, and then dried. Not salted, just dried. Hung on wooden racks in the cold, dry air, for weeks, until virtually all the moisture had left. The result was something that looked like, and had roughly the texture of, a piece of old leather. Pale, rigid. You could knock on it, it knocked back. This was dinner. To eat it, you had options. Option 1, you beat it, literally, against the side of the ship, against a stone if you had one, against anything hard enough to break the fibres apart, soften it enough to chew without damaging your teeth. Option 2, you soaked it, in water, for hours, overnight if you were organised enough to plan ahead, the water rehydrating the fish, returning it to something that vaguely resembled food again. Vaguely. Option 3, you just ate it as it was, hard, cold, completely unimproved, because you were hungry enough. And hunger, as anyone who has been genuinely physically hungry will tell you, is an extraordinarily effective seasoning. The bread, called hardtack in later centuries, though the Vikings had their own versions long before the word existed. Flatbread or hard biscuit, baked twice to remove almost all moisture, which was the point. Moisture was the enemy of preservation. Moisture meant mould, meant rot, meant food that lasted a week instead of a month. So you removed the moisture. You baked it until it was, essentially, a dry disc of grain, edible, calorie-dense, durable, and about as enjoyable as eating a clay tile, but it lasted, and lasting was everything. You soaked it too sometimes, in water, or in whatever liquid was available, which softened it, slightly, enough. You didn't eat for pleasure on a longship, you ate for continuation, for the simple maintenance of a body that had work to do tomorrow. Dried meat, usually mutton or beef, salted and dried before the voyage, the salt doing two things simultaneously, preserving the meat and making you thirsty, which brings us to water, the most important thing on the ship, more important than the weapons, more important than the trade goods, more important than almost anything else in those sea chests. Water was carried in barrels, large wooden casks lashed securely to the ship, and rationed, carefully, from the first day. The captain knew how much they had, how long the voyage should take, how much each man needed each day to function, and he divided it accordingly. No more, no exceptions. Running out of water at sea was not a problem you survived. There was also ale, small ale, weak, low in alcohol. The same reasoning as in medieval Europe generally. The fermentation process made it safer than water, less likely to make you sick, and on a ship, slightly less precious than water, but valued for different reasons. A small amount of ale at the end of a hard day of rowing did something that water didn't. Something psychological, a small warmth, a small comfort, a signal to the body, the work is done for now, you can rest. Small things mattered enormously out there, now. There were things they foraged too, when the opportunity arose. On longer voyages, when they stopped at islands or coastlines, they supplemented what they carried. Seabirds, caught when they landed nearby, eaten immediately, not saved. Fresh meat was too valuable to wait on. Fish caught from the ship, a line over the side, patient waiting. The particular focused stillness of fishing, which the Vikings were extremely good at, had been good at their whole lives, from childhood. A fish caught fresh, eaten raw sometimes, or dried quickly on the ropes in the sun and wind. A few hours of drying, better than nothing. Fresh food, after days of dried everything, was almost overwhelming. Let me tell you about the cheese, because among the preserved foods, cheese was the one that still tasted like something. Hard cheese, dense and sharp, made from sheep or goat milk, aged enough to travel, aged enough to last weeks without spoiling. Among the dried fish and the hard bread and the salted meat, the cheese was the thing that reminded you food could be good. That somewhere, back in the world you'd left, there were meals that people looked forward to. Warm food. Food that smelled like something. Food eaten sitting still. Inside. The cheese was a small embassy from that world. A reminder that home existed, that home was real, and that you were going back to it. Mealtimes on the Longship were not formal. There was no table, no designated hour. You ate when you were hungry and when the work allowed it, sitting on your chest, or leaning against the hull, or standing at the rail watching the water. The meal itself took very little time. There was nothing to prepare, nothing to cook, nothing to arrange. You reached into the chest. You took what you were going to eat. You ate it. You drank your ration of water. You put the chest lid back down. That was the meal. Start to finish, maybe 10 minutes. Food as fuel. Nothing more. Nothing less. But there were exceptions. When they landed, when they came ashore, whether to trade or to rest or to resupply, they built a fire, and everything changed. A fire on a beach. After days of cold food and cold air and cold water, the warmth of it, physical, immediate, the smell of something cooking, real cooking, meat over flames, or a simple broth in a pot, or fresh fish grilled on sticks. Hot food, after days without it, was not just a meal, it was a restoration, something returning to you that the sea had slowly taken. Warmth, taste, the feeling that the world could be comfortable if you let it. The crew sitting around that fire, quieter than usual, not because they had nothing to say, because the fire was saying everything. There is an old Norse concept, matagledi, food joy, the specific pleasure of eating well with good company. Not luxury necessarily, not elaborate food, just good and shared. The Norse took this seriously. Food shared was a bond. A table was a kind of promise. To eat with someone was to declare something about your relationship with them. The sagas are full of moments where the sharing of food matters, where hospitality is the measure of a person, where a meal offered generously carries more weight than almost anything else. To feed someone is to care for them. It has always meant that. And so on those nights, on the beach, around the fire, eating something warm together, the crew wasn't just refueling. They were reminding each other of something important, that they were not just a machine for crossing water, that they were people, with names, and homes, and families, and a preference, a strong, clear preference, for warm food eaten sitting still. But tonight, there is no beach, no fire, just the ship, just the cold, just the dried fish and the hard bread and the water ration. A man reaches into his chest, takes out a piece of stockfish, looks at it for a moment. It has not improved since yesterday. He eats it anyway, slowly, methodically, washing it down with his water ration, his small portion of ale. And then, He takes out the cheese. Just a small piece, saving the rest. He eats it slowly, eyes closing briefly. There it is. There's the taste. He puts the lid back on the chest, leans back against the hull, the ship moving beneath him. That familiar rise and fall. His stomach, not satisfied exactly, but settled, quieted, willing to let the rest of the evening go. The chest is closed. The food is done. The water ration finished. Let your stomach settle. Let the ship do its work. That rise and fall, patient and ongoing. Chapter 6 is waiting. Sleeping on the water. How 30 men found rest on an open deck in the middle of the North Sea. How the ship became a bed. How exhaustion and motion conspired to carry them under. But only when you're ready. The cheese was good. Rest now. It's dark now. Properly dark. The last of the evening light gone from the western horizon. Just stars, and the black water beneath them. And the ship, moving slowly. The wind gentle tonight. The sail barely full, just enough to keep them moving. And the crew is trying to sleep. Now, I want to be honest with you about sleeping on a Viking longship. It was not comfortable. It was not designed to be comfortable. Comfort was not a consideration in the construction of a longship. Speed was. Flexibility was. Seaworthiness was. The ability to carry a crew and cargo across an ocean and arrive intact. That was. But a flat wooden deck in the open air, in the North Atlantic, at night, was no one's idea of a good night's sleep. And yet, they slept. They always slept. Because the body, after a day of rowing, after a day of cold air and salt and physical effort, doesn't ask permission. It simply insists. Let's talk about how they prepared, because there was a preparation. Small, practical, but real. The sleeping skin first, called a húðfat in Old Norse, literally skin bag. A large sack made of animal hide, waterproofed with fat or oil, lined with wool or fur on the inside. You climbed into it, pulled it up around you, cinched it at the top if the weather demanded. This was the genius of it. The húðfat was essentially a sleeping bag, a waterproof sleeping bag, that the Vikings had been using for centuries before the concept existed anywhere else. It kept the wind out, the spray out, the worst of the cold out, and trapped the body's own heat inside. Which, on a North Atlantic night, was the difference between sleeping and not sleeping. Where you slept on the ship mattered. The most protected spots, amidships, the middle of the ship, where the motion was least, the hull flexing less there than at the ends, where the cargo was sometimes stacked, creating low walls of shelter against the wind. These spots went to the senior men, the experienced crew, the ones who had earned them over voyages and years. The younger men, the first-timers, slept at the ends, near the prow or the stern, where the motion was more pronounced, where the spray came over more readily, where the wind found you with less difficulty. Another thing you earned, with time, with voyages. The watch. Not everyone slept at the same time. That would have been inadvisable, to put it gently. A ship full of sleeping men with no one at the steering oar, no one watching the sail, no one watching the horizon for weather or rocks or other ships, was a ship that might not be a ship by morning. So the watch system continued through the night. 2 or 3 men awake at all times, rotating in shifts. A few hours on, a few hours off. The man on watch, standing at the stern, hand on the steering oar, eyes on the sail, eyes on the water, eyes on the stars, which were navigation as much as anything else. Alone in the dark. 30 sleeping men around him. The sea in every direction. The night watch on a calm night was its own experience. Nothing like the day. The noise and the effort and the company of the crew, all of that gone. Just the dark, and the water, and the stars. The Norse were intimate with stars in a way we are not. They named them. They tracked them. They understood their movement across the sky through the seasons with a precision that came from necessity. The North Star, Polaris, was the fixed point. Always north. Always there. The one thing in the sky that didn't move, while everything else wheeled around it. Night after night. Faithful. The watchman found it, checked his heading against it, made the small adjustment to the steering oar if he drifted, and went back to watching. The stars moving slowly overhead, marking the hours, telling him how long until his shift ended, how long until he could lie down. Let's go to the men who are sleeping, because this is where we want to be, down on the deck, in the Huthfath, somewhere in the middle of the ship, where the motion is gentlest. The deck is hard. There's no pretending it isn't. Oak planking. No padding between you and it except the fur lining of the bag. But the body, after a day of rowing, adapts to hard surfaces with remarkable speed. The tiredness smoothing over the discomfort, filling in the gaps, making the hard thing acceptable. The exhausted body is not picky. You pull the Huthfat up around your shoulders, the fur against your face. Warm, animal, alive smelling in a way that is oddly comforting out here on the open water. The man next to you is already asleep. You can hear his breathing. Slow, even. The sound of someone completely gone from the waking world. You want that. You can feel how close it is. The motion of the ship. This is the thing that surprises people when they first sleep at sea. You expect it to keep you awake. That constant movement, the rise and fall, the occasional roll. You expect it to be disturbing, but it isn't. Not after the first night. Not once the body understands that the motion is constant, that it isn't a warning. Just the ship. Just the sea. Just the way things are out here, and the body accepts it, and the motion becomes something else entirely. A rocking, slow and deep and regular, like being held, like being carried, up and down, up and down. The sea doing something it has always done, long before there were ships on it, long before there were people to notice. Just moving, rhythmically, endlessly, patient as anything in the world. The sounds of a sleeping ship. Let me give them to you slowly, one at a time. The water, against the hull, that soft, irregular lapping, never exactly the same twice, but always water, against wood, close, just there. The hull, its deep, slow creak. The planks talking to each other as they flex. A language of wood and pressure and movement that never stops. The sail. A low hum in the rigging. The wind finding the ropes, playing them like strings. A single sustained note that rises and falls with the strength of the wind. Always there, under everything. The breathing of the men around you, some of them deeply under. That slow, heavy breathing that only comes from genuine exhaustion. Some of them lighter, shifting occasionally. The soft sound of the Huthfat moving, a body finding a better position. And very far away, at the stern, the faint sound of the watchman, moving occasionally, the creak of his weight shifting. Awake so you don't have to be. Now, Let's be honest about the cold, because the cold was real, even in the Huthfat, even in summer. The North Atlantic at night, in any season, is cold in a way that finds you, that gets in around the edges, that the bag helps with but doesn't entirely solve. Your face, the part you can't put in the bag without suffocating. Your face feels it. The cold air on your cheeks, your nose, each breath coming in cold and leaving warm. The cold and the warm, each breath, in and out. But inside the bag, the body has done its work, warming the space, claiming it, that small private warmth that belongs only to you, that the sea can't reach, that the wind can't find. Yours, just yours. Dreams on the water. The Norse believed, as we touched on in an earlier video, that dreams carried meaning, that the sleeping mind was open to things the waking mind was not, and dreams at sea were considered particularly significant. You were between worlds out here, between the land you'd left and the land you were going toward, between the familiar and the unknown. And in that in-between, things could reach you. A dream of home was a good sign. A dream of fire was a warning. A dream of a specific person, someone left behind, was taken seriously. Mentioned to the captain in the morning sometimes. Discussed quietly. The Norse didn't separate the practical from the spiritual the way we do. A dream wasn't just a dream. A dream was information. From somewhere worth listening to. The middle of the night. The deepest part. The hours when the stars have wheeled past their highest point and are beginning their slow descent toward dawn. The watchman knows these hours, has been here before. The hardest part of the watch, when the cold is deepest, when the sleep of the men around him is most persuasive. He stands, moves his feet, checks the North Star, checks the sail, checks the horizon, all 360 degrees of it, slowly. Nothing. Just water. Just stars. Just the ship. Good. He settles back, hand on the steering oar, the night continuing around him. Slow, cold, vast, and quiet in a way that only open water at night can be quiet. The whole world asleep. Or so it feels. And then, very slowly, almost too slowly to notice at first, something changes in the sky. The absolute black of midnight becoming something else. Not lighter, not yet, but different. The darkness having a direction to it now. East, where the first suggestion of dawn will eventually come, starting to feel different from west. The watchman notices. He always notices. Has been counting toward it for hours. Not long now. Not long. But the crew is still sleeping. That deep, heavy sleeping of the middle of the night. Bodies completely given over. The ship rocking them slowly. The Huthfat holding them. The water doing its patient work beneath them. Up and down. Up and down. The sea carrying them. The way it always has. The way it always will. You are on the ship. In the bag. Warm where it matters. The cold on your face is just the night. Just the sea air. Just outside. The ship is moving. You don't have to move with it. It will carry you. Up and down. Up and down. The watchman has it. The stars are out. The North Star is exactly where it should be. Everything is exactly where it should be. Chapter 7 is waiting. Navigation. How they found their way across an ocean without instruments, without charts, with nothing but the sky and the sea and knowledge so deep it lived in the body. But only when you need it. The ship is moving. You don't have to do anything at all. How do you find your way across an ocean with no instruments, no compass, no charts, no GPS, no satellite, no lighthouse on the horizon, no landmarks of any kind in any direction? Just water and sky and a wooden ship and 30 men whose lives depend on the answer. This is the question that has fascinated historians for generations. How did the Vikings do it? How did they cross the North Atlantic, one of the most difficult and unpredictable bodies of water on Earth, repeatedly, reliably, in ships with no cabin and no instruments and no radio and no way to call for help if things went wrong? And they did it. Not just to Norway's neighbours, not just to England and Scotland and Ireland, to Iceland, to Greenland, to North America, 500 years before Columbus, across thousands of miles of open ocean, without instruments. The answer is both simpler and more extraordinary than most people expect. The sun. Start here, because the sun was the primary navigation tool for the Viking sailor. Not complicated, not mysterious, just the sun. In the northern hemisphere, the sun rises in the east, moves through the southern sky, sets in the west, at its highest point, exactly south. A Viking navigator could establish direction from the sun's position at any point in the day, not precisely by modern standards, but accurately enough. Accurately enough to cross an ocean, which is what matters. He also knew, from experience and from the knowledge passed to him, how the sun moved differently through the sky in different seasons, higher in summer, lower in winter, rising and setting at different points on the horizon depending on the time of year. He carried this knowledge the way he carried his knife, always, without thinking about it. But what about clouds? Because the North Atlantic is not famous for its clear skies. Days of overcast, fog, rain, the sun invisible for days at a time. This is where it gets interesting. There are references in Norse sagas, and in later Icelandic texts, to something called a solarstein, a sunstone, a crystal that could locate the sun even through cloud cover, even through fog, even when the sky was completely white and featureless. For a long time, historians thought this was legend, a poetic device, not real. And then, in 2013, a crystal was found in the wreck of an Elizabethan ship, an Icelandic spar crystal, a form of calcite that when held up to the sky, even overcast sky, and rotated slowly, changes brightness at the precise point where the sun is hidden. It works. The sunstone works. A piece of crystal held up to a cloudy sky, finding the sun, on a ship in the middle of the North Atlantic, 1,000 years ago. The stars. We talked about the North Star already. Polaris, the fixed point, always north. But the Viking navigator used more than just Polaris. He used the entire sky. The rising and setting points of specific stars told him direction. The height of specific stars above the horizon told him latitude, how far north or south he was. If Polaris was at a certain height above the horizon, he was at a certain latitude. He knew what latitude Iceland was at. He knew what latitude Norway was at. He could sail to a specific latitude, using the stars, and then simply sail east or west along that line until land appeared. Latitude sailing. Simple in concept, extraordinarily effective in practice. The waves. This is the one that surprises people most. The waves themselves, as a navigation tool. Ocean swells, the long, deep, rolling waves that travel thousands of miles, have consistent directions. The dominant North Atlantic swell runs in a specific direction, generated by storms far away. Consistent, reliable. Even when the wind changes, even when the sky is completely clouded over, The swell keeps its direction. The ocean remembering a storm that happened days ago, far away. The Viking navigator felt this swell through his feet, through the hull, through the steering oar in his hand. He knew which way the swell was running, and he knew what that meant for his heading. Not conscious calculation, not mathematics, just feel. The body reading the water the way a musician reads music, without having to think about it, because thinking about it would only get in the way. The birds. Always the birds. Because birds mean land. Certain species don't go far from shore, see them, and land is close. In that direction, or close to it. The Vikings knew their birds. Which species, which direction they flew, what time of day they returned to shore. A bird flying in a consistent direction in the late afternoon, going home, told you something useful. Land that way. Follow. There are accounts, in the Icelandic sagas, of Vikings carrying ravens on their ships, deliberately. When they thought land might be near but couldn't see it, they released a raven. A raven is clever. A raven wants land. If it flew in a direction and didn't come back, land was that way. If it circled and returned to the ship, no land close enough. Keep sailing. The raven knowing what the navigator could not yet see. The colour of the water. The experienced navigator read this too. Deep ocean water, far from land, is a specific dark blue, almost black in certain lights. As you approach land, the water changes, lighter, greener, the seafloor coming up beneath you, shallower water catching the light differently. He knew this colour, had seen it many times, knew what it meant, knew how to read the subtle shift from deep ocean darkness to the paler green of approaching shore. The sea changing colour beneath you, telling you something. The smell too. Land has a smell, earth and vegetation and fresh water running into the sea. Before the coast is visible, sometimes, you can smell it. That green, living smell carried on the wind, completely different from the clean salt smell of open ocean. Land. Close. The clouds, because even clouds told a story. In certain weather conditions, clouds form over land when the sky over open ocean is clear. A stationary cloud on the horizon, not moving the way weather clouds move, sitting still, over the same point for hours, meant something beneath it. Land beneath it, holding it there. The heat of the land creating the cloud above it. Iceland was found this way, by a navigator watching a cloud that didn't move, heading toward it, finding land beneath it. A cloud that stood still, in a sky full of moving things, pointing down. Now, let me tell you about the navigator himself, the man who held all of this. This was not just skill, this was a life's work, a lifetime of accumulation. He had sailed these waters since he was young, had watched older navigators, had paid attention in the way you pay attention when your life depends on it. The feel of different swells, the behaviour of different winds, the way certain currents ran at certain times of year, the temperature of the water, felt with a hand over the side, which told him which current he was in, which told him where he was. A hand in the water, and knowing. He carried mental maps, not drawn, not written, remembered. The shape of coastlines he had seen once 10 years ago, the profile of mountains approaching from the sea, the specific way a harbour entrance looked from 5 miles out, from 10 miles out, in different lights, different weathers. His memory was his chart, his experience was his instrument, his body, trained over decades, was the most sophisticated navigation tool on the ship. There is a word in Old Norse, leiðarbísir, route guide, way shower. The oldest surviving Norse navigation text gives directions from Norway to Greenland, like this. Sail west from Bergen. Keep Shetland to your north. Sail so that you can just see it in clear weather. Keep the Faroe Islands to your south. Sail so the sea appears halfway up the mountainsides. Keep Iceland to your north. Sail so the sea appears halfway up the mountainsides. Keep Iceland to your north. Sail so the birds and whales of Iceland are visible. Then sail west, until you reach Greenland. That's it. Those are the directions. From Norway to Greenland, across hundreds of miles of open ocean. Sail so the sea appears halfway up the mountainsides. Keep the birds of Iceland visible. Then sail west. Not coordinates, not degrees, just descriptions of what to look for, of what to feel, of how the world looks when you are in the right place.
And it worked. That is the thing. It worked. Not perfectly. Ships were lost, men disappeared, the ocean took its share. It always did. But the route between Norway and Iceland sailed regularly for centuries. The route to Greenland, established and maintained for hundreds of years. The route to North America, made multiple times, by people with no instruments, with only their senses, with only the knowledge in their bodies and the sky above them and the water beneath them, reading the world, the way the world can be read, if you learn its language. It is evening now. The navigator has been on the steering oar since midday. His relief is coming soon. Another pair of hands for the oar, another pair of eyes for the horizon. Before he steps away, he does what he always does. One more slow look around. North, east, south, west. The sky, the water, the birds. Nothing unexpected. Everything as it should be. The heading correct. The swell from the right direction. The stars beginning to appear exactly where they should be. Good. Everything is good. He passes the oar, exchanges a few quiet words with his relief. The heading, the wind direction, what to watch for. And then he finds his place on the deck, pulls the huthfat around him, and closes his eyes. The man who spent all day reading the ocean, surrendering to it now, letting it carry him, the way it carries everyone, eventually. The heading is correct. The stars are exactly where they should be. The swell is from the right direction. You don't need to navigate tonight. Someone else has the oar. Someone else is reading the sky. Let the ship find its way. It knows how. It has always known how. Up and down. Up and down. The ocean reading itself. Carrying you. Chapter 8 is waiting. The storm. What it looked like coming. What it felt like arriving. And the extraordinary silence that came after. But only when you need it. The stars are out. The heading is true. Sleep if you can. It starts with the water. Always the water first. Before the wind changes, before the sky darkens, before anyone says anything, the water knows. The swell changes. Longer. Deeper. Coming from a different direction than it was an hour ago. The ship responding differently. A different motion. A different conversation between the hull and the sea. The navigator feels it first. Through his feet. Through the oar. He looks west. And there it is. A North storm in the North Atlantic is not a polite thing. It doesn't arrive gradually. It doesn't give you time to prepare in any comfortable sense. It arrives the way the North Atlantic does everything. On its own terms. At its own pace. Without particular concern for what you need. But the navigator has time. A little time. The water told him early enough, and now he moves. Not panicking, not rushing in a way that frightens the crew, just moving with purpose. The quiet urgency of a man who has seen this before and knows exactly what needs doing. The sail comes down. First. Always first. The sail that has been driving them forward, that beautiful striped wool pulling taut in the wind, comes down now. Because in a storm, a sail is not a help.
A sail in a storm is a lever, a way for the wind to grab the ship and do what it wants with it, which is not what you want. The sail folded, lashed down, secured. Everything that can move, secured. The sea chests lashed to the hull, the water barrels checked, the cargo strapped down tight. Everything that could become a projectile, made to stay where it is. On a ship in a storm, a loose barrel is a weapon. The oars go out, all of them. The whole crew rowing now, not in shifts, everyone. Because in a storm, you need to keep the bow into the waves. Always the bow into the waves. The Longship is designed to take waves head on. The high, curved prow climbing the wave, cresting it, coming down the other side. This is manageable. What is not manageable, what ends ships and crews, is taking a wave side on, beam on. A large wave hitting the full length of the hull, the broadside, can roll the ship, can capsize it, can put 30 men in the North Atlantic in seconds. So you row. You keep the bow forward, whatever it takes. And then the storm arrives, properly. The wind first. Not the wind from before. Something different. Something with weight to it. Leaning on you. Pushing you sideways when you're trying to go forward. The kind of wind that makes it hard to hear. That fills your ears and takes other sounds away. That makes the man next to you, 3 feet away, seem very far. Just the wind. And the oar in your hands. And the man behind you rowing. Then the rain. Horizontal. Not falling. Flying. Driven by the wind into every gap in your clothing. Down your neck. Into your eyes. Making it hard to see the bow from the stern. The ship disappearing into white water and noise. Reduced to the oar in your hands. The man behind you. The wave coming. The next stroke. The waves now. What the swell became. Those long, deep rollers from before, transformed. Steeper now. Closer together. The ship climbing them. Steeply. The bow rising. Rising. Until you're looking up at the crest and the stern is somewhere below you. The whole ship tilted. Climbing. Then, the crest. A brief, terrible moment at the top. The whole ship exposed. The wind hitting it from every side. The spray, everything white. And then, down. The bow dropping. The ship sliding down the back of the wave. Fast. Too fast. The bow hitting the trough. Water coming over. Cold. Shocking cold. Even through wet clothes. Even through everything. Cold like a decision. Cold like a reminder. And then, the next wave. Already there. Already rising. And the bow turning into it. And the rowing continuing. Always continuing. The hull. Remember what we said about the hull? The clinker construction. The overlapping planks. The flexibility. This is why. This is exactly why. A rigid hull in this sea, fighting every wave, taking each one as an impact, would crack, would open, would let the sea in. But this hull, this flexible living hull, moves, twists slightly as each wave passes, absorbs, gives, comes back. You can feel it beneath you. The ship alive in the water, working. A frightening feeling. The first time, the wood moving beneath you, the planks flexing, every instinct saying, this should not be moving like this. But the experienced men know, this is right. This is what it's supposed to do. This movement is the ship surviving. Trust the ship. The ship knows what it's doing. Hours pass. The storm doesn't care about hours. The storm doesn't care about anything. It does what it does for as long as it does it. And the crew rows. Not thinking about tomorrow. Not thinking about yesterday. not thinking about home or the voyage or anything beyond, the oar, the wave, the next stroke. This is what extreme conditions do. They reduce everything, strip everything away, until there is only what is directly in front of you, what needs doing right now, in this moment, this stroke, not the next one, this one. There is something almost clarifying about it. The men who survive storms, and most of them do, often describe this, not in these words, but in this meaning, that in the worst of it, there was a strange simplicity. Everything that wasn't essential, gone. Everything that was, completely clear. The captain, on the steering oar through all of it, hours on the steering oar, the whole force of the storm coming through that oar into his hands, into his arms, into his shoulders. Every wave a conversation, the sea pushing, him pushing back, keeping the bow forward, always forward. He doesn't shout commands over the wind. The crew doesn't need them. They know what to do. They've known since the sail came down. Row. Keep the rhythm. Don't stop. The captain holding the ship. The crew holding the ship. Together. There is a Norse concept, hugur, something like inner strength, spirit, the quality of a person that doesn't break under pressure. A storm at sea was considered, in Norse culture, a test of hugur, not just of physical strength, of something deeper, the quality of a man's steadiness, his ability to stay himself when everything around him was chaos. The man who panicked in a storm, who stopped rowing, who lost himself in the fear, was not just a danger to himself, he was a danger to everyone. You stayed yourself, whatever it took. You stayed yourself. And then, at some point, that is impossible to predict and impossible to rush, the storm begins to ease. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a slight reduction in the wind. The waves still large, still steep, but slightly less so. The rain easing, from horizontal to merely heavy, from heavy to something that might be called normal rain. The storm letting go, slowly, the way it always does. The crew feels it, doesn't say anything yet, doesn't celebrate. The sea has tricked people before. A brief easing, then more storm. You don't celebrate until it's clearly over. But they feel it. The slight relaxation in the shoulders, the stroke becoming a fraction less desperate, still rowing, but differently. And then, the after. This is the part I want you to stay with, because the after is something extraordinary. The storm passes, the wind drops, the rain stops, the clouds begin to break, and the sea, still rough, still moving with the memory of what just happened, begins to settle. Slowly. Not immediately. The sea takes time to forget a storm, but the silence, after hours of wind and rain and wave and effort, the silence that comes after a storm is unlike any other silence. It has weight, it has presence, it feels earned. The oars come in, one by one, arms that have been rowing for hours putting the oars down, lying where they are, not moving, just not moving. The particular luxury of stillness, after hours of effort. Someone checks the ship, the hull, running hands along the planks, checking for damage, checking for water. There was always some water. Some came in over the bow, some through the oar holes. The bailers, simple wooden scoops, used to clear it. Someone bailing quietly, while everyone else rests. The ship is intact, the hull held. The crew is here, all of them, present, accounted for. Exhausted and wet and cold, but here. Everyone here. The captain stands at the stern, looking at what remains of the storm, moving away to the east now, that dark wall receding, the sky behind it, clearing, the first stars appearing, the North Star exactly where it should be, still there, always there. Nobody speaks for a while. Not because there's nothing to say, because some things don't need saying. The storm came, the storm passed, the ship held, the crew held. Everyone knows this. The silence acknowledges it better than words would. Then someone, one of the older men, says something quiet, something short. The others hear it. A few of them respond. A brief sound, somewhere between laughter and relief. The specific sound of people who just survived something and know it. Food is distributed. The same dried fish, the same hard bread, the water ration, which tonight tastes like the best thing anyone has ever drunk. Context changes everything. After a storm, cold water from a wooden barrel is extraordinary. The stockfish is extraordinary. Even the hard bread. Even the hard bread. Everything tastes different after fear. Everything tastes real. And then, one by one, the crew lies down. The hoothfats pulled around them. The wet wool. The damp fur. None of it matters. The exhaustion is total. Absolute. The kind that takes you before you finish lying down. Bodies that rode through a storm for hours in the North Atlantic, claiming what they earned. Sleep. Deep and immediate and complete. The sea settles through the night. Those storm waves, tall and steep and urgent, gradually flattening. The ocean forgetting, becoming again what it was before. That long, slow swell, patient, deep, ancient. The ship rocking gently now, gently, like nothing happened, like the storm was a dream that the ocean has already let go of. Up and down, up and down. The sea remembering how to be gentle. The storm is behind you now, far behind you, moving east, away. The sea is calm, the ship is steady, the North Star is exactly where it should be. Let the motion carry you, up and down, up and down. You rode through it. You held. Chapter 9 is waiting. The gods were watching. What the Norse believed was out there with them on the water. What they prayed to. What they feared. What gave the storm a name and the calm a meaning. But only when you need it. The sea is gentle now. You don't have to do anything at all. The storm is gone. The sea is quiet. The crew is sleeping, and one man, sitting at the bow, is looking at the sky. Not on watch, not doing anything practical, just looking. The way you look at the sky after something has happened, after something has passed, when you're still here and you know it and you want to acknowledge it, somehow, to something, to whatever was watching. Because the Norse believed, completely, practically, in their bones, that something was watching. Let's talk about the Norse gods. Not the Marvel version, not the mythology book version where everything is distant and symbolic. The real version. The version that existed in the minds of the men on this ship. To a Viking sailor, the gods were not abstract. They were not metaphors. They were not stories told to children. They were present, active, involved. The storm that just passed had a source, had an author, was not random weather, was something. Something that had decided to happen, and something that had decided to stop. Odin, the All-Father, first among the Aesir gods, god of wisdom, war, poetry, death, and the sea in the broadest sense, of all the unknowns, of all the things that couldn't be controlled. Odin was one-eyed, had traded the other eye, willingly, for a drink from the well of wisdom, had hung himself on the world tree, Yggdrasil, for 9 days, wounded by a spear, without food or water, to gain the knowledge of the runes. Knowledge purchased with suffering, wisdom earned at a cost. He was not a comfortable god, not a warm god, not the kind of god you prayed to for safety and reassurance. He was the kind of god you respected, deeply, carefully, because Odin gave gifts, but gifts from Odin always came with something else attached. The Vikings knew this, and prayed to him anyway. Thor. Now here is a god the sailors understood more simply. Thor was reliable, powerful, direct, the god of thunder, of storms, of strength, of the protection of ordinary people. Where Odin was distant and complicated, Thor was close. Thor was the god of farmers and sailors, the one who fought the monsters at the edges of the world, who kept the chaos back, who made the crossing possible. Thor was who you called on when the storm came, when the waves were too big, when you needed something on your side. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, was worn around the neck by many Norsemen, a small iron or silver pendant, not just jewellery, protection, a piece of Thor carried against the skin. There are men on this ship wearing that pendant right now, sleeping in their hoothfats, the hammer against their chest, still there, warm from their body. Thor keeping watch while they sleep. Njord, the sea god, specifically, the god of the sea and seafaring and favourable winds, the one who actually ran things out here. Njord lived at the shore, at the place where sea and land met, which is where all the important things happened, departure and return, the threshold between the known and the unknown. He controlled the winds, could calm the sea, could grant safe passage, could, if displeased or ignored, withhold all of it. The offering before departure was for Njord, the thanks after a safe crossing for Njord, the prayer in the middle of the storm also for Njord. He was the one you were always negotiating with, the one whose attention you wanted, whose favour made the difference between a good crossing and a very bad one. You couldn't take Njord for granted. No Viking sailor did. You acknowledged him, regularly, gratefully, and a little nervously. Now, the world the Norse believed in was not just the gods. It was much larger than that, much stranger. 9 worlds, connected by Yggdrasil, the world tree, an enormous ash tree whose roots and branches reached through everything. Asgard, the realm of the gods. Midgard, the middle world, the world of humans. This ship, this sea, right here, Midgard, the middle place, between everything above and everything below. And beyond Midgard, at the edges of the world, the ocean. Not ordinary ocean, the great ocean, surrounding everything, in which lived Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent. A serpent so large it encircled the entire world, tail in its own mouth, holding everything together, and holding everything in. The sailors knew this, knew what they were sailing on top of, what lay beneath them, not as metaphor, as fact. The deep ocean was not empty to them. It was inhabited, full of things, some known, some not. Whales, enormous creatures that surfaced occasionally, were navigational markers, as we discussed. The presence of whales meant something, told you where you were. But whales were also, in the Norse imagination, something more. Creatures from somewhere deeper, ambassadors from the world below, rising from the dark, looking, going back down. And then there were the things that had no name, shapes seen at night, on the surface, gone when you looked directly, sounds from under the hull that shouldn't have been there, currents that ran against all reason. The open ocean at night is strange, even to modern sailors. Even with instruments and radar and radio, the darkness, the sounds, the sense of something vast beneath you. The Norse simply gave it a name, and respected it accordingly. The runes. Because out here, on the open water, some men had other tools, beyond the sunstone, beyond the stars, beyond the birds and the waves. The runes were not just an alphabet, not just a writing system. Each rune had a meaning, a power, a connection to something in the world that could be invoked, summoned, made present. Carved on the ship, certain runes protected it, kept it seaworthy, kept the crew safe, or so the belief went. And belief, on a ship in the middle of the North Atlantic, was not nothing. Carved on weapons, they made the blade stronger, more accurate, more willing to do what it was supposed to do. Spoken aloud, in the right circumstances, by someone who knew how, the runes changed things. The Volva, the Norse seeress, used runes in her practice, reading them, casting them, speaking them. Some crews had a man who knew the runes, who could use them when needed, when the weather was wrong, when the wind wouldn't come, when something felt off. The rune carved in the wood, the words spoken to the sea, the small attempt to be heard. Valhalla. We should talk about where the Norse believed they were going, if they didn't come back, because every man on this ship knew the risk, understood it, had made peace with it, or not, before he stepped aboard. Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, Odin's Hall in Asgard, where warriors who died honourably in battle went after death. A feast hall, enormous. 540 doors, 800 warriors through each one, where you feasted and fought and feasted again, every day, preparing for Ragnarok, the final battle, the end of everything. This is what the Norse believed waited. Not paradise in the gentle sense, not clouds and peace. A feast, a fight, more feast, more fight, surrounded by the greatest warriors who had ever lived, for eternity. Which, if you understand the Norse, sounds exactly like what they would have wanted. But not everyone went to Valhalla. This is the part people often miss. Valhalla was for those who died in battle, specifically. Those who died of illness, of old age, of a straw death, they called it, a death in bed, went to hell. Not hell in the Christian sense, just the other place, a grey realm, quiet, ruled by a goddess named Hel. Not terrible necessarily, just lesser. Which is why a Norse warrior would rather die in battle, even a small battle, even a quiet one. The dying with a sword in hand, the dying with your boots on, the dying at sea, if necessary, still counts, still gets you there. A man who drowned in a storm, rowing with everything he had, was considered to have died well. Not a straw death, a sea death, which was something, which was enough. The man at the bow, he's been sitting there a while now, looking at the sky, or looking at the sea, or somewhere between the two. He survived the storm. He knows this. Feels it in the way you feel things after. The aliveness of being alive. The particular weight of still being here when you weren't certain you would be. He says something, quietly, to the sky. Not a formal prayer, not a ritual, just a few words. The way you speak to something when you believe it can hear you. When you've just been through something and you want to acknowledge that you know. that you didn't do it alone, that something was watching, and for whatever reason, let you through. The Norse relationship with their gods was not one of submission, not worship in the way some religions understand it. It was more like a negotiation between equals, almost. You gave something, the gods gave something back. You held up your end, you expected them to hold up theirs. And if they didn't, there are sagas where Norsemen actually argued with their gods, challenged them, accused them of bad faith, threw their Thor hammers into rivers in protest. You gave me a bad harvest. I gave you my offering. We had a deal. A relationship with the divine conducted like a business arrangement, with complaints, with negotiations, with the occasional strongly worded message, which is entirely human, completely recognizable, 800 years ago, and right now. The man at the bow finishes what he was saying, sits a moment longer, looking at the sky. Then, slowly, he gets up, goes back to his place amidships, pulls the hoothfat around him, closes his eyes. The gods are watching, or they're not. Either way, he's done what he could do, said what needed saying, and the rest is up to them. As it always was, as it always is. The gods are watching, or the stars are, or the sea is. Something is, and tonight, whatever it is, it let you through. Let the stars hold you, the same stars those men navigated by, the same stars that have always been there, above every ship, above every sea, above every person who ever looked up and wondered. Still there, always there. Chapter 10 is waiting. Land on the horizon. The first sight of shore after weeks at sea. What it looked like. What it felt like. What a man does when the thing he has been moving toward finally appears. But only when you need it. The gods are watching. Rest now. It's early morning. The kind of early that isn't quite light yet. The stars fading. The sky going from black to a deep, uncertain grey. The sea the same colour as the sky. No line between them, just grey, in every direction. The crew is waking, slowly. That particular slowness of bodies that rode through a storm 2 days ago and haven't fully recovered. The ache of it still there, deep in the shoulders, in the lower back, in the hands. Unwrapping themselves from the hoothfats, sitting up, looking at the grey world around them. Another morning at sea. How many now? This is the part of a long voyage that the sagas skip over. The middle days, the ones that are neither departure nor arrival, neither storm nor calm worth remarking on, just days on the water. The food running lower, not dangerously, not yet, but noticeably. The stockfish portion a little smaller than it was a week. It's early morning, the kind of early that isn't quite light yet. The stars fading, the sky going from black to a deep, uncertain grey. The sea the same colour as the sky, no line between them, just grey, in every direction. The crew is waking, slowly. That particular slowness of bodies that rode through a storm 2 days ago and haven't fully recovered. The ache of it still there, deep in the shoulders, in the lower back, in the hands. Unwrapping themselves from the hoothfats, sitting up, looking at the grey world around them. Another morning at sea. How many now? This is the part of a long voyage that the sagas skip over. The middle days, the ones that are neither departure nor arrival, neither storm nor calm worth remarking on, just days on the water. The food running lower, not dangerously, not yet, but noticeably. The stockfish portion a little smaller than it was a week ago. The bread harder to find at the bottom of the chest. The water ration still sufficient, but watched. Everyone watching the barrels, without saying so. The mood on the ship quieter than it was. Not bad exactly, just ready. Ready for the voyage to be over, ready for land, ready for fire and warm food and the smell of earth. The body has a way of telling you when it has had enough of something, even something it chose, even something it wanted. Enough now. Ready to be somewhere else. The navigator has been calculating, not with instruments, we know that, with everything else. The stars each night, the sun each day, the direction of the swell, the colour of the water, the temperature of it, checked with a hand over the side each morning, the birds, or absence of birds, the clouds. And he knows, not precisely, but well enough. They are close. A day, maybe two, if the wind holds, if nothing changes. He hasn't told the crew, not yet. You don't tell a crew they're almost there until you're certain enough that the almost is real. False hope on a ship is worse than no hope at all. The raven. Someone brings it out, from wherever it's been kept. A caged raven, black, alert, watching everything with those eyes. The crew watches it too. They know what the raven means. They know why it's being brought out. The navigator opens the cage. The raven steps out, looks around, ruffles its feathers, looks at the navigator, looks at the sky, and then it flies. Northwest, a straight line. No circling, no hesitation, just northwest. And it doesn't come back. Nobody cheers, that's the first thing to say. Nobody cheers or shouts or celebrates. These are not men who celebrate early. The sea has taught them better than that. The raven going northwest means land is northwest. It doesn't mean they're there. It doesn't mean the crossing is done. It doesn't mean anything except adjust the heading, row if necessary, keep the crew looks. Not all of them see it immediately. It's faint, just a shadow on the horizon, a darkness that is slightly different from the darkness of the water, that doesn't move the way waves move, that stays fixed. The navigator sees it. He's been seeing it, or sensing it, for the last hour. The watercolour changing, lighter, greener. He knew, but he waited for the boy to say it first. Let someone else have the moment. Let the young one have it. It grows, slowly, the shadow on the horizon becoming something more, the outline of it taking shape, the top edge of it going from flat to something with height, something rising. Mountains, dark against the pale sky, still far, still hours away, but there, unmistakably there, real, solid, not moving. Land. Actual land. After all of this. Now, here is what I want you to understand about this moment, this specific moment. Land appearing after weeks at sea. It is not just relief, though it is that, enormously, physically, in the chest, in the throat. It is also something stranger, something harder to name. After weeks of nothing but water, weeks of the horizon being empty, weeks of the world being reduced to ship and sky and sea, the appearance of land is almost shocking. The world is larger than the ship. It always was, but you forgot. The mountains are enormous. After weeks of flat water in every direction, the verticality of them, the sheer height, something going up, after so long of everything being horizontal. It's almost too much, for a moment, almost overwhelming. The world had mountains in it. You just couldn't see them for a while. The smell reaches them before the shore does, that green living smell. Earth, vegetation, fresh water somewhere, pine trees, if the wind is right, carrying all the way out here. The crew breathes it. without meaning to, without deciding to. The lungs just taking more, wanting more. After weeks of salt and tar and wet wool, the smell of land is something the body recognises at a level below thought. Home. Or close enough. Not Norway necessarily. Maybe this is England. Maybe Scotland. Maybe Ireland. Maybe somewhere they've been before. Maybe somewhere new. But land. Solid. Real. Smelling of everything the sea is not. The birds are everywhere now. Seabirds. Circling. Some of them landing on the water nearby, looking at the ship with that particular bird assessment, deciding it is neither food nor threat, going back to their business. The water is different now. Greener. Lighter. The depth coming up beneath them. The navigator checking it. A weighted line dropped over the side. Feeling for the bottom. Finding it. Measuring it. Shallow enough. Getting shallower. The coast ahead of them now. Not just mountains. Details appearing. The line of the shore. Dark rocks at the water's edge. The white of breaking surf. The green of actual trees. Actual living trees. Standing still. Not moving. On ground that doesn't move. The concept of stillness, after weeks of constant motion, is almost abstract now. Ground that doesn't rise and fall. A surface that stays where it is. They've almost forgotten what that feels like. The sail comes down. The oars go out. The final approach, done under oar power. Careful now. Reading the water. The rocks below the surface as dangerous as the ones visible. More dangerous. The navigator watching. The colour of the water. The pattern of the surf. Where the waves break. Rocks beneath them. Where they don't. Passage. The patience required for this. After weeks of open water, where the only obstacle was weather, suddenly everything close together. Every decision immediate, consequential. The margin for error much smaller. So close now. Don't rush. Not now. And then the bow touches. That sound. Wood on gravel or sand. The hull grinding just slightly as the ship finds the bottom and stops. The ship stops. Stillness. Actual stillness. Not the absence of motion, the presence of something else. Ground beneath them. Fixed. Immovable. The kind of stillness they have not felt in weeks. The oars shipped. Laid down. Men stepping over the side, into the shallows, cold water around their legs, but their feet touching the bottom. Solid. Real. Not moving. One man wading out of the water, onto the shore, onto actual dry land. He takes a few steps, and then he stops. Because his legs are wrong. His body, trained for weeks to compensate for constant movement, is still compensating, still adjusting for a motion that isn't there anymore. The ground is still. His body doesn't believe it. Still swaying, still making the tiny corrections for a ship that isn't beneath him. Land sickness. The opposite of seasickness. The body remembering the sea, even when the sea is gone. He laughs, quietly, at himself, at the strange loyalty of the body to what it's been through. Another man lands beside him. Same thing, same unsteady steps, same laugh. All of them,
swaying on solid ground. Sailors on land. Someone finds fresh water, a stream, coming down from the hills, clear, cold, running over rocks. The crew moves toward it without being told, cupping hands, drinking, drinking, drinking. Fresh water, not rationed, not measured, just there, running, free. The taste of it, after weeks of the barrel, clean and cold and endless. And someone is already building a fire, gathering wood from the tree line, dry wood, real wood, not wet, not salt-crusted. The fire catching quickly, growing. The smell of it, wood smoke, drifting up the shore. The crew gathering around it. Not because they need the warmth necessarily, because they need the fire. The fire meaning something beyond heat. Meaning, we are ashore. We are safe. We are here. We made it. Nobody speaks much. Not at first. There is food being prepared. Something fresh. Something caught or found. Something that will taste extraordinary. And there is just the sitting on ground that doesn't move, the fire in front, the sea behind, the men around you who you have rowed with and slept beside and survived a storm with, also just sitting. The silence of people who have been through something together and arrived. The boy who called land is sitting closest to the fire, his face lit by it, looking at the flames, not at the sea, not at the mountains, just the fire, the warmth of it, real and immediate and entirely without drama. He will remember this crossing his whole life, this fire, this shore. The moment he said the word, and it was true. Land. He said it first. The shore is under you now. The ship is resting. The fire is warm. Let the ground be still beneath you. That solid, unmoving stillness. After so long of everything moving. Chapter 11 is waiting. The long way home. Turning the ship around. The Norwegian coast somewhere ahead. The people waiting there. The particular feeling of a voyage moving toward its end, but only when you need it. The fire is warm. The ground is still. You don't have to go anywhere yet. The shore has been good to them. A few days, maybe a week. Time to rest. Time to eat properly. Time to remember what it feels like to sleep on ground that doesn't move. The water barrels refilled. From that stream in the hills. Full now. Heavy. Lashed back into the ship. The food stores replenished. Whatever could be traded for. Whatever could be caught or gathered. The sea chests restocked. Ready. As ready as you can be. For going back out there. The departure from shore, the second departure, is different from the first. The first departure, from Norway, was full of something. Anticipation, nervousness, the weight of leaving home, the unknown ahead. This departure has something else, quieter, more settled. The unknown is known now. They crossed it once. They know what it asks of them. They know what they can give. The sea is familiar now. Not safe. Just known. And pulling against it. Stronger now than when they left Norway. The pull toward home. Which is a different thing entirely from the pull away from it. Leaving home pulls at you. But going home pulls harder. Let's talk about what home meant. To these men, specifically, concretely.
Not an abstract concept, not a feeling. Specific things, specific people, specific smells and sounds and textures that the mind returns to when the body has been away long enough. The longhouse, the smell of it, the fire in the centre, the smell of wood smoke and food, and the particular smell of a space that belongs to your family, that no other place smells like. The smell of your own home, which you don't notice until you've been away. The wife, who has been running everything, who is, without question, more capable than he gave her credit for, who will tell him this, probably within the first hour. The children, who are taller, always taller than he expects. Children do that. Grow while you're not watching. Become slightly different people by the time you return. The time taken from him, that he can't get back. The price of going. The farm. He thinks about the farm, the fields, what state they'll be in, what needed doing before he left that may or may not have gotten done. The roof of the barn, which was worrying him before he left, still worrying him now, probably more so, because he can't see it, can't know, can only wonder. The animals. Who has been feeding them? Whether the cow is well, whether the sheep came through the summer. Small worries, ordinary worries, the kind that feel almost luxurious after weeks of worrying about storms and water rations and the bottom of the North Atlantic. The barn roof. What a thing to be worried about. What a wonderful, ordinary thing. The return voyage moves differently in the mind. Same water, same sky, same ship, same oars, but different. Each day now, a day closer, not a day further from. The outward voyage counted away from home, each day adding to the distance. The return counts toward it, subtracts, reduces the gap. The same number of miles, feeling entirely different depending on which direction you're covering them. Distance is not just physical. It never was. The return voyage has its own rhythms, its own character. The crew, more settled now than they were outward bound. The rough edges worn smooth. The irritations of close company, still there. Always there. But managed. The small accommodations made. The quiet understandings reached. Who needs space in the morning? Who needs someone to talk to at night? Who rows harder when pushed, and who rows steadier when left alone? A crew that has crossed an ocean together, and is crossing it again, knows each other, in the particular way that shared difficulty creates. Not always comfortable knowledge, but real, honest, the kind that doesn't go away. There is a Norse word, heimþrá, homesickness, literally, home longing. Heim, home. Thra, longing. The Norse had a specific word for it, because they felt it specifically, regularly. A culture of people who left, and came back, and left again, had to have a word for the feeling of being away and wanting to be home. Heimþrá, the word for the specific weight of it, the particular ache of the distance. On the return voyage, heimþrá is present, but different. It has a direction now, a destination. The longing's still there, but moving toward its resolution. Which is almost pleasant. Almost. The anticipation of something good still ahead of you, the not yet of it, having its own sweetness. Close, but not yet. Getting closer. The days pass, the rowing when there's no wind, the sailing when there is, the food from the restocked chests, the water ration, the watches through the night, the stars. The North Star, still there, still north, still reliable. No second storm, not this time. The weather is not kind exactly, The North Atlantic is never exactly kind, but manageable. The winds mostly favourable, the seas mostly reasonable. Njord letting them through. This time. And then the navigator knows, the way he knew before he can see anything, before anyone else suspects. The water temperature changed slightly. The swell familiar. This particular swell. He has felt this swell before, knows what it means, knows where it comes from. The birds are different too, different species now, the ones that live in Norwegian waters, the ones he grew up seeing, from the shore, as a child. Norwegian birds, Norwegian water, Norwegian swell. He is home, almost, not yet, but close enough that his body knows it, before his eyes do. The coast of Norway appears in the same way the other coast did. A shadow first, a darkness on the horizon that doesn't move, getting darker, getting taller. The mountains. But these mountains are known, each one recognised, named. The navigator naming them quietly to himself as they appear. Old friends, landmarks, confirmations. That one. That one. Yes. Yes. The crew recognises them too, one by one. Someone says a name, a mountain, a headland, somewhere they know, somewhere they can place on the map in their minds. And this time, someone does say something. Not a cheer, not a shout, just a word or two. Quiet, certain. The kind of word you say when something you needed to be true is true. The fjord entrance. The navigator finds it without hesitation, has found it many times before, will find it many times again. The gap between the headlands, the water darker inside, stiller, the mountains rising on either side, sheltering, familiar. The ship turning into the fjord, the open sea behind them now, the North Atlantic, done with them for now, letting them go. The sea releasing them, as it always does, eventually. The water in the fjord, calm, that deep dark stillness of sheltered water, the sound of the oars, changed in here, the mountains sending it back, an echo, the ship announcing itself, the oar sounds coming back from the stone walls, familiar, known, the sound of home, and the village, appearing around a bend, the longhouses, the smoke rising, the smell of it, drifting across the water, wood smoke and earth and everything familiar. Someone on shore sees them, a figure, stopping, looking, then moving quickly, toward the village, telling someone. They're back. The ship is back. And the shore fills, slowly, people coming down, the same people who stood there when they left, or close to them, children running ahead, women walking, old men standing at the back. The crew sees them, the oars moving faster now, without being asked, without the captain saying anything, just faster. The ship wanting to be there, the men wanting to be there. The distance, almost gone now. The bow touches the shore, the same sound as before, wood on gravel, the hull grinding gently, the ship stopping. Home. The boy who called land first is one of the first over the side, into the shallows, onto the shore, his mother there. He doesn't say anything, neither does she. Some things don't need words. He went. He came back. That is everything. And the man, the farmer, the one who worried about the barn roof, who thought about the cow, who watched his children grow in his imagination all the way across the North Atlantic and back. He walks up the shore, past the other reunions, toward the village, toward his longhouse, the smoke still rising from it, the smell of it, his smell. His wife meets him halfway. She looks at him. He looks at her. A long moment. the assessment of someone reading the face of a person they know well after a long absence. Thinner, older maybe, but here. She says something, probably about the barn roof. He laughs. He can't help it. Of course it's about the barn roof. The children appear, running, taller, as expected, as feared, as wonderful. That night, the fire inside the longhouse, not a beach fire, not a ship fire, not the small warmth of something temporary, a home fire, in a hearth that has held fires for years, that knows how to burn, that heats this specific room the way it always has. Warm food on a table, real food, hot, made by someone who knows how he likes it, eaten sitting still, on ground that doesn't move, at a table he built himself. Matargledi. Food joy. The real kind. The children asleep, the fire lower now, the house quiet, his wife's breathing beside him, slow, even, the sound of home. He lies there, eyes open for a moment, looking at the ceiling of his own home, the familiar dark of it, the familiar smell, the familiar stillness of ground beneath him. Still, not moving. Home. And he closes his eyes, and the sleep that comes is the deepest sleep of the entire voyage, the sleep of someone who has been away and has come back, who is exactly where they should be, in the place that knows them, that holds them, that was waiting. The fire is low, the house is quiet, the ground beneath you, still. Let that stillness settle into you, all the way down. The voyage is behind you now. The sea is behind you. The storm, the oars, the cold and the grey and the endless water. Behind you. All of it behind you. You're home. Chapter 12 is the last one. Coming ashore. What happens after? What the Vikings did when the voyage was truly over. How they put the sea down and picked up the land again. And how they slept. Finally. Completely. But only when you need it. The fire is low. The house is holding you. You might already be home. The ship is on the shore, pulled up above the waterline, the hull resting on the gravel. The keel that carried them across the North Atlantic and back, sitting still now, not moving, quiet in a way it never was at sea. The oars are shipped, the sail is folded, the sea chests carried up the shore to wherever they belong, the ropes coiled, the water barrels empty, everything returned to land, everything accounted for. The voyage done. Truly done. There is a ritual. Of course there is. The Norse did not end a voyage without acknowledging it, without marking the transition from the world of the sea back to the world of the land. The ship itself was honoured. The ship is on the shore, pulled up above the waterline, the hull resting on the gravel. The keel that carried them across the North Atlantic and back, sitting still now, not moving, quiet in a way it never was at sea. The oars are shipped, the sail is folded, the sea chests carried up the shore to wherever they belong, the ropes coiled, the water barrels empty, everything returned to land, everything accounted for. The voyage done. Truly done. There is a ritual. Of course there is. The Norse did not end a voyage without acknowledging it, without marking the transition from the world of the sea back to the world of the land. The ship itself was honoured, not casually. The ship had carried them, had held them above the deep water, had flexed and creaked and survived everything the North Atlantic sent. The ship deserved acknowledgement. A hand on the hull. Just a moment. Just thank you. And an offering to Njord, who let them through, who could have taken them and didn't. Food cast into the water of the fjord, a few words spoken quietly. The same words perhaps as before the departure, but different in meaning now. Before, a request. Now, a thanks. We went out there. You let us come back. We remember. Now, the days after. Because coming ashore was not an instant return to normal. The body needed time. The seasickness of land, we mentioned this. The body still moving when the ground was still. This lasted days sometimes, a week for some men, waking in the night certain the floor was moving, reaching out to steady themselves against something that wasn't there. The sea following them home, into their sleep. The hands, too, still gripping in the night, closing around an oar that wasn't there. The muscle memory of weeks, not erased overnight, not erased in a week, fading slowly, the body letting go of what it held onto to survive. This is what long voyages do. They change you. Not dramatically, not in ways you can always name, but the body remembers. The body keeps the record, long after the mind has moved on to other things. The ship was cared for. This is important. A Viking longship, after a voyage, was not simply left on the shore. It was maintained, tended, treated with the seriousness of something valuable, which it was. The hull was checked, every plank, every rivet, every seam, looking for damage, looking for weakness, looking for anything the voyage had taken that needed replacing. Pine tar applied to the outside, that smell again, sharp and resinous, preserving the wood, keeping the water out, making it ready for next time. There was always a next time. In some places, the ship was stored for winter, pulled fully ashore, covered with a temporary roof of timber, protected from the snow and the frost, sleeping through the cold months, the way the land slept, the way everything slept, waiting for spring, waiting for the ice to clear the fjord, waiting for the moment when someone would come and say, "It's time." Again. The stories begin. This is what happens after a voyage. In the evenings, around the fire, the stories of what happened. At first, told to the immediate family, the wife who wants to know everything, the children who want the exciting parts, the father who wants to know if the voyage was worth it. Then, to neighbours, to the wider community, the voyage becoming a story, shaped by the telling, refined, the unimportant parts falling away, the important parts, the storm, the first sight of land, the moment the raven didn't come back, staying, growing. This is how sagas began. Someone came home and told what happened. The skald, the poet, if there was one on the voyage, and on significant voyages there often was, he had been composing throughout, the whole crossing, in verse, in the particular music of the Norse tongue, the storm they survived, the land they found, the captain's steadiness at the oar, the boy who called land first. All of it preserved, in sound, in memory, in the particular way that poetry preserves things better than almost anything else. Let's talk about the boy, one more time. The first voyager, who left the shore not knowing, who went out there and learned, who came back different, not dramatically different, not changed beyond recognition, still himself, still the same person who left, but carrying something now that he didn't have before. Knowledge in the body, the feel of a North Atlantic swell under a ship at night, the weight of an oar after 3 hours, the sound of a storm arriving, the colour of the water changing as you approach land. Things you can only know by going. Things nobody can tell you. Things that live in the body now. And next spring, when the captain starts looking for crew, the boy will be first to say yes. Not because the voyage was easy, not because the sea was kind, but because he knows now what he didn't know before, that he can do it, that the sea can be crossed, that the storm can be rowed through, that the land appears, eventually, always, eventually, the Longship on the shore. Let's go back to it, one more time, just to look at it. In the late afternoon light, the hull dark with pine tar, the prow rising, the dragonhead removed now, resting somewhere safe, not needed here, no land spirits to frighten in the home fjord, the oar holes plugged, the rowing benches empty, the sail folded and stored, that striped wool, red and white, that was seen from miles away on the open water, folded now, quiet, at rest, the ship resting, everything earned. And now, the night, the first full night ashore, after the voyage is truly over, after the reunions and the food and the stories told once beside the fire, after the children are asleep, after the longhouse has gone quiet. He lies on his bed, a real bed, not the deck of a ship, not the hoothfat, not the hard oak planking with the North Atlantic beneath it. A bed, stuffed with something soft, a wool blanket, his wife's breathing beside him, his children somewhere nearby, the fire low in the centre of the room. Still, everything still. He closes his eyes, and the sea is still there. Of course it is. It takes time. The body holding on to what it lived through. The faint rise and fall still present at the edge of sensation. The oar still faintly in the hands. The sound of water, somewhere. But under all of it, stillness. The stillness of the longhouse. The stillness of the ground. The stillness of a place that has been waiting for him, that is glad he came back. The sea is behind you. The storm is behind you. The oars are at rest. Just the fire now, low and patient, in its hearth, doing what fires do, burning slowly, giving warmth, making the dark smaller. And outside, the fjord, dark and still, the mountains above it, the stars above them, the North Star, exactly where it should be, as always, faithful, fixed, always there. We've spent the whole voyage together, you and I, and the crew, the 30 men on a school bus-sized ship with no roof, the navigator reading the water, the captain at the oar, the boy who called land first, the man who worried about the barn roof. We rowed when the wind failed. We survived the storm. We ate the dried fish without complaint, mostly without complaint. We found the land. We came home. We came home. Here is what I want to leave you with, before the fire goes down completely, before the last chapter closes. The Viking Age lasted roughly 300 years, from the late 8th century to the end of the 11th. 300 years of ships leaving fjords and crossing oceans and coming back, or not coming back. The ones who didn't come back, who are also part of this. But the ones who did came home with things, not just cargo, not just the contents of the trading chests, knowledge, stories, the shape of coastlines nobody else had mapped, the routes to places nobody else had reached, the proof, repeated and confirmed, that the world was larger than anyone sitting on the shore could imagine. And they passed it on, father to son, captain to crew, skald to audience, generation to generation, the knowledge accumulating, the routes becoming safer, the world becoming slightly more known, with each crossing
And the ships are gone. Most of them.
Wood doesn't last forever. Even good oak, even well maintained. Eventually, the sea takes them back. Or the ground does. Or time simply does what time always does. But some survived, buried with their owners, in the Norse tradition of ship burials. A great man buried in his ship, the ship that carried him in life, carrying him into whatever came next. The Oseberg ship, the Gokstad ship, the Toon ship, dug from the earth, still there. You can see them in museums in Norway, the actual wood, the actual keel, the actual planks that flexed in North Atlantic storms over 1,000 years ago. Still there, still holding their shape, still, in some sense, ships. And now, the last thing. The very last thing before we let the fire go down. The man in the longhouse, the farmer, who worried about the barn roof, who is home now, lying in his bed, eyes closing, the fire low, the family sleeping, the fjord outside, the North Star above it. He will fix the barn roof tomorrow. He will. But tonight, he doesn't think about the barn roof. He doesn't think about much. The exhaustion is too deep for thinking. The bed is too soft. The warmth is too complete. He thinks, briefly, about the storm, the bow rising, the water coming over, the oar in his hands, the captain steady at the stern, the ship holding. It held. It always held. He thinks about the boy, calling land, that word, quiet at first, then certain. Land. He thinks about the fire on the beach, the crew around it, the fresh water from the stream, how good it tasted. And then he thinks about nothing, because the sleep takes him, the way it always does, eventually, without asking permission, without announcing itself, just there. And then he is somewhere else entirely. The fire is almost out. The longhouse is dark. The fjord is still. The ship is on the shore. The North Star is where it always is. And you, wherever you are, whatever time it is, whatever brought you here tonight, you made the crossing too. Chapter by chapter, hour by hour, through the ship and the crew and the oars and the stars, through the storm, through the gods watching, through the land appearing on the horizon, through the long way home. You made it. The barn roof can wait. The oars are at rest. The sail is folded. The North Star is exactly where it should be. The fire is warm. The ground is still. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. You're exactly where you should be. Good night, from wherever this found you. Good night. If you made it this far, thank you. Genuinely. If this helped you sleep, subscribe. There are more voyages coming, more worlds to drift through, more fires to sit beside, more history that moves slowly enough to carry you somewhere quiet. Leave a comment telling me where you watched from and what time it was. I read every single one. And if someone you know needs a night like this, send it to them. Good night.